Well, my guest today is she's been back three times. This is her third time on the pod. I think first time I think that's like the first time I'd ever spoke to you. We chatted about like the pros and the cons of each sign. And then I think last time you came on, you were telling us about COVID and like how the world's gonna explode, which it did. So this time,
wasn't I accurate?
Yes,
wasn't I accurate?
Very accurate.
Second lockdown when Mars went retrograde.
Exactly. You were totally right. So you have some exciting news. That's what I wanted to chat with you about today. We tried to record this episode. When was it that you came to mine? It was like
must have been July the 15th.
Summertime, because it was like absolutely roasting. I listened back to the recording that we attempted and we were both like, I'm so hot, I'm so tired, we're so sweaty.
I remember because I was really faint that day and I felt like really bad.
Mm-hmm. And it must have been like when we had the heat wave, and I was fresh into my new apartment, and we were talking about how much better you were feeling just overall, because you actually like paid to work with me probably, how long ago was that? Like beginning of this year, you ran some labs.
Late April.
Okay. So yeah, we ran different labs, and I put Cassie on a protocol, and we went into your like health history and like story during the first episode. So if you want like a deep dive, definitely go and listen to that. But can you just give us like an overview as to what you were struggling with, why you wanted my help initially, and then also share what you wanted to share today?
Oh, well, I was very sick because in a way I felt a lot better, but like I was so sure I had hypothyroidism for ages, and there was loads of like unexplained things like going on that was just like always cold. My body temperature was like ridiculously low. My periods weren't quite right. Like I'm not sure I was ovulating. I can't even remember now, but I definitely remember I felt like tired but wired a lot of the time. I think I'd gone as far as I could go with like not having lab tests, and it was like I didn't know specifically what was wrong, but definitely didn't feel well. It was hard to put my fingers on, but I remember definitely feeling a lot more tired. Then my libido wasn't quite right, but my main challenge was fertility, because after like years of anorexia, over exercise, then like when I started eating, my body piled weight on, my digestion was bad, I was like chronically inflamed, and I kept getting like literally big like massive rashes on my thyroid. Like I didn't know what it was at the time, but no one could work out what it was, and just generally didn't feel well. But I would say that my biggest concern was fertility, because I knew something was off with my periods. They were really scant. I would
get like
really
major PMS, wouldn't you?
It was more like I got very, very sad with PMS when it actually started to kick in, because before that I wasn't really even, I don't think, having a proper period. I don't know. So there's something afoot anyway. And and so we did the protocol. I literally did more or less everything you told me. Like I was vegan before, and it was like I just did everything at the foods. It was very hard reducing my exercise, so I did keep like quite a lot of strong yoga in my, but I definitely reduced what I was doing. And I definitely found that there was a point where I got to like a rock bottom. I think it was when I knew I had to still eat some more, and I was like, oh, this is just so difficult. And I remember feeling that, and I had to like let myself abandon all. It was like I was having all these old beliefs around food that came up, And I don't know why that was, but it just came up for me. I still don't know to this day how I felt like I'd gone back. But now I think about it, I'd actually moved house. Do you remember when I moved house? I was convinced there was mold in that house because there'd been many, many floods. And that house made me really depressed. And I actually think that house made everything harder for me.
Yeah.
Because the minute I moved out, I've not had any worries, and my mood's been great. In fact, it was just moving to that house that triggered all of like my like feelings of sadness. So, you know, in the story of health, you know, it is like we need supplements and the food and the movement, but also your environment, relationships you're in, like your family around you. If you don't have that, I think that played havoc a lot with my that one point when I remember saying to you, I need to just not take anything. But actually it was because I just needed to say I don't have to do any of this and take all the pressure off, like I didn't have to take any supplements or do anything. And then actually I was like, fine. The next day I woke up and was like, cool, and just ate more. So I don't know what that was about. But then like about 2 weeks after that, found out that we were on holiday and we found out that I was pregnant. And it was not planned. But it was also like, holy crap, like this thing that I literally thought my body couldn't do, it can do. So I was like in complete awe by that.
And were you in Cornwall? Do I remember you were? Is that the trip?
Yeah, we were in. So we found out. I'm in Cornwall, and I know the day that. Okay, Vivian, do you want to know? This is weird. The day that we conceived the kid was that day that I said to you, I'm really stinky, and I'd come to visit you, and I was like, why am I so stinky? And I felt so like weird, and I said, I'm sure I've ovulated early, so I must have ovulated early, because that night was the night of conception. When I got home and I'd just seen you,
the hot summer's day,
like, yeah, and the steamy hot heat.
My energy must have influenced something.
Yes. So basically, I genuinely believe you are now the baby whisperer.
Oh my God.
Always. We found out because we were in Cornwall, and I'd done like this Reiki course. I was teaching a Reiki, like level 1, and all through the day I was thinking my tits are absolutely killing. Like they are really sore, like, and I thought this is like more than PMS. They were like in agony, as if Mike Tyson had come and just like battered them, and that wasn't normal for me. Like they might get a bit tender. And I thought, well, maybe it's my hormones just trying to level out again. And then we went away to Cornwall, and I was like a little bit bloated, but not massively, like you would be before your period. You sort of just not, you know, when you like ovulate and then after your period, you feel like super lean, and you can normally have quite good ab definition. And it was just like a bit distended, but my boobs are like huge and swollen and all veiny. And I was like, it's a bit weird. And I remember thinking, this isn't normal for me. And I had fertile mucus, even though I was like literally 2 days out from my period. That's not normal for me. I don't really produce a lot of mucus anyway. So I remember thinking, oh God. But it was Alex that said to me, he was like, are you sure you're not pregnant? Because he was looking at me. I was standing there topless one of the nights, like just getting changed. And I was like, I don't think so. Like, because we missed like what I thought was my ovulation, even though I was like, I have fertile mucus on the wrong time. Bit strange. So anyway, long story short, we ended up a few days later, like my period hasn't come. So we went to Morrison's, and I bought a Morrison's pregnancy test because they're like £3.50. And honestly, like my friend was like, they're super accurate. So I went and got one of those. He's in Morrison's Cafe. It's like imbued Morrison's, and it's like a really depressing rainy day. It pissed it down the whole holiday. It was like horrific. And I peed on this stick, and it was like a midday pee, which you're not supposed to do. And there was like a faint positive. And I was like, oh, okay. Because I know you can't get a faint positive, like, unless you've got something really wrong. So I was like, oh. So I kind of just left it, and I said to him, I could be pregnant, and we're in like Morrison's freaking cafe. Just like, it was so weird. And he was like, oh right. And I said, it could be a false positive, like it's definitely not a false positive. And then we got home the next day. I did one in the morning. It was a bit darker, and I was like, oh god. So long story short, we then moved to Glastonbury, and here's the creepy thing. By this point, it's kind of sinking in that I could be pregnant, and I'd seen it in my astrology, and I thought, oh god, it's actually happening. But the woman, when we got to Glastonbury, this super like hippie spiritual woman, showed us into this yurt where we were staying, and she didn't know anything about it. She literally just met us, and she says, and it'll be really nice and comfy for the three of you, and pointed to her belly, like held a pregnant belly. And we looked at each other, and he's like, how do you know she's pregnant? She's like, oh, she's pregnant, you can tell. And I was just like,
Oh my god, I didn't know that.
it was so weird. We had all these mad symbols. It was like, oh god. So yeah, that's how we found out, in Morrison's bathroom.
Love it. And when you say it was kind of in your astrology chart, what kind of things are you looking out for on there? Can anyone find things like that out?
It's like with astrology and prediction, you have to be very careful, because like I said to you probably before, you need to look at a big variety of factors. Like there's not just one thing. It would have to be a few things that were suggesting it. But for me, it was in my progressions. It was also in my solar return for next year, which is where you can often see a lot of fertility, and in the big conjunction that's about to happen in December, which is like literally going to be big for every single person somewhere in their life. So yeah, I could see it happening. But even then, it could have been that I was just going to get really creative and like sit at home a lot. But it's not like, I kind of knew that, but in my head I was like, I don't feel like my body's ready or was fertile. But obviously Vivian, the fertility whisperer, has worked a magic. So
well, I'll cover like what imbalances you had, and then what kind of approach we took to get your hormones back on track. And I have a list of like the symptoms that you filled out before. So definitely digestive issues, feeling full very quickly, like wanting to eat, but not physically being able to get a lot of food in your stomach. And obviously with like your eating disorder past, that's a really common issue. And your enzyme production probably massively reduced because of the whole stress. But you said when you did eat food, you would put on weight very quickly. So your body, your metabolism just really messed up. And really tired, you said, mentally and emotionally, and like periods, cold hands and feet, low libido, so many imbalances. But you were doing like a lot of the right things. So you were exercising, like the things that we all hear about, like to support hormonal health. With some of it, it was a little bit too far, so like exercising but too much. And when you were like resting, it was like going on walks for hours during the day. And your job's like pretty draining as it is. So doing Reiki and kind of therapy, it's like constantly depleting energy. So it was just kind of depleting you from all angles. So I also agreed that thyroid must be playing a role. And I think, had you had thyroid checked before? They just tested like TSH or nothing at all? TSH.
They tested thyroid and they kept saying, oh, nothing's wrong. And I'm like, well, there is something wrong.
So we did a private thyroid test. Your ferritin, your iron was low. So that in itself could have been contributing to fatigue, tiredness, like all of that. And your TSH was normal. So if we did just do TSH, it would have seemed fine. And that's usually the case because TSH is one of the last things to go out of range when your thyroid's like really damaged and you need medication. But then your T4 and T3 were low. So that definitely like sluggish thyroid, underactive thyroid, and your antibodies were elevated, thyroglobulin antibodies, so indicated Hashimoto's, which makes sense because that's the cause of sluggish thyroid 90% of the time. So all of that had been missed. Who knows how long it had been going on for? It had been like 6 months, could have been 6 years. But it was really important that we like supported that because your periods are like more of a surface level problem. So like fertility, period problems, estrogen and progesterone, they're like the tip of the iceberg. But if the metabolism and the thyroid gland, which is like under the surface, isn't working, then you're never going to balance your periods and have optimal fertility. So we also did a mineral test, because minerals, they're involved in literally every symptom and every system of the body. So because you had so many like body systems involved, like skin and brain function and gut, as like something's like affecting them all. So minerals are often at play along with the thyroid, and mineral imbalances can actually cause thyroid issues in the first place, like having a high calcium level. So we started there. We got your results back, and it also confirmed that you had a sluggish metabolism but very high calcium, which is really common with trauma. And you mentioned in the first episode, but your body has been through a lot of trauma, like physically and emotionally, so made sense. And just for reference, ideal calcium level should be around a 42. Cassie's was at 416. At that moment in time, I think it was the highest that I've seen, but since then, I've had someone beat you, Cassie, so you're off the top spot.
I'll do. I hope it's gone down now.
Yeah.
I think we need to do that test again.
Yeah, definitely.
I haven't got much hair this time, so I'm like going to mega grow out my pubes.
Okay, fun. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks.
But calcium's a very like big and bulky mineral, so it's very sluggish, like drains and slows down the metabolism. So that's why your thyroid was affected in the first place. And your copper level was very high as well. So usually high copper causes estrogen dominant type symptoms. So even though you didn't have like high estrogen levels, because your periods were like, we didn't do specific hormone testing, but your periods were like light and scanty. So you could still have estrogen dominance, even with a low normal estrogen. You just had very low progesterone in comparison. But copper is should be like a Goldilocks nutrient, somewhere balanced in the middle. Yours was definitely elevated, and that can cause a lot of emotional symptoms, so anxiety, mood swings, PMS, emotional kind of instability. So made total sense. So the types of things that we did, we had to slowly work on that copper detoxification. You can't just go in with like a huge push, because that's going to make her feel worse. So we gently added some gut support, some whole food vitamin C powder, just to support her adrenals and get that copper out very slowly. We added in a copper-free and calcium-free mineral formula, because a lot of them, if you were someone who just took a random multivitamin or prenatal off the supermarket shelf, a lot of them contain high levels of calcium and copper, especially prenatals. So that would actually make you feel worse. So if we'll talk about your experience during first trimester, but the fact that you were still so symptomatic, but we've been working on your health for a while, I can only imagine how symptomatic you would have been, like if we hadn't have started working on the calcium and the copper issue. I think the nausea and everything would have been way worse. But lifestyle and the diet thing was really key. I was just educating you, and you were probably already on the border of transitioning from the vegan diet at that point, and I just give you that little extra nudge, because copper toxicity or high copper is very common with plant-based diets, because plants are very high in copper, animal products are very high in zinc. So that's why I believe the optimal human diet has a combination of both. So you were getting a lot of plants, not enough zinc, and stress and adrenal issues also cause you to retain copper as well. So you started adding some meat into your diet, and you were like a venison addict for many months.
Yeah.
Is that still the same?
I've only just been able to even think about meat. Yeah. But the truth is, like, I've never been big on meat, and I kind of got big on it, you know, when I was having it again. But definitely now my palate has changed, and I'm leaning more towards like shellfish, and like kind of that's the best I can do at the moment. I've just thought about salmon today, so hopefully I can get to a point where eggs and grass-fed meats kind of feel appealing, but first trimester they've just been like literally repulsive. So I'm gonna try and get on that as soon as I can, but it's definitely not the same now.
Yeah, you definitely have to listen to your body, otherwise you'll just like vomit everything out, which isn't good. And then with the lifestyle thing, it was really about slowing down, resting more, kind of turning inwards, and going back into like your feminine, because you were doing a lot during the day, and again, like very energy depleting job. But give us an overview, because currently are you at like 14, 15 weeks along?
Yeah, I'll be 15 soon.
Okay,
So
so give us an overview of your experience during the first trimester, because we were saying before, like you read online and they're just saying drink more water, take your prenatals, eat some vegetables, but I've heard from you that it's very difficult.
yeah, and like even like people like Lily Nichols in her book is like, do you know what? She struggled.
Yeah.
I literally knew loads of people who worked in dietetics, nutritional therapists. I know, you know, because in our world, like a lot of people are. And I chatted to like every single one feeling so bad, because when 6 weeks came, the moment that Mars went retrograde, so I kind of knew it was coming. The sickness just hit me like a it was just so strong, and it wasn't in the morning, it was like all the time, it was constant. And when it was very bad, it was like even water was repulsive. Like I had to like put like loads of lemon in my water and ice, like half the cup would be ice. It was really hard to get good food in. And I remember I was like eating like gluten-free cereal some mornings, and that was useless, that would just come back up. It was hard, you know, and every kind of, it was, I didn't crave, you know, people say, well, what cravings do you have? I don't really get cravings, I get aversions, and they're really strong. So I would be in the supermarket, and like I remember when it was really bad, I couldn't walk anywhere near the meat or fish aisle, just thought of it. But I remember once I was walking down like the coffee aisle, because I went really off coffee. I used to be like a decaf addict. I walked down the hot chocolate, and I walked past like just cacao, which like I would used to love. I was like a chocolate addict, and like I literally was like, oh, like sick in my mouth at the thought of cacao. So it was like really strong aversions to just anything that was like, and like avocado was like repulsive to me, and protein powder, which I loved my smoothies, I couldn't stomach. So it was bad. Like even porridge, anything hot was vile. So it was bad. And loads of nutritional therapists I spoke to were just like, yeah, I couldn't eat anything. Like they were like, I lived on toast. One lady was like, I lived on Nutella and crumpets. And it's just like everyone you speak to, apart from 2 or 3 people, and those 2 or 3 people, may I add, were not into nutrition at all. There were people that had just, you know, eaten moderately the whole life, exercise moderately, drink a couple of glasses of wine a week, you know, like, and they were like, yeah, I was fine, never had any issues. And I'm just like, and then you had all these people that were like health nuts, are all the people that are telling me no, they were horrifically ill. So I'm like, oh,
why do you think that is?
I honestly think, right, and this is my theory, I don't know, I don't think obviously sickness is normal, but aversions I think is quite good. I feel like it's your body saying don't eat that right now, like because it's trying to be wary of pathogens and stuff. There's loads of theories, but no
like
one really knows.
It's more intuitive for like a safety reason than someone else's body.
I think so, because like you don't want to obviously get pathogens that early on, because it can just like really hurt the baby. Like if you got flu virus, my mum had flu virus when my sister was about 11 weeks in the womb, and all her teeth, even her adult teeth, have no enamel. Right. And they're really messed up. Yeah, so it can create permanent damage. So obviously you don't get flu virus from food, but you wouldn't want, when the baby's that delicate, I don't think you would want like anything. It's like pretty dangerous. And then after that your baby seems a bit more robust in some ways. But I think it's because certain foods are more likely to give you, like, you know, they say that salads, you know, more likely to give you food poisoning stuff because they're not washed, and salads were repulsive. And like I used to be a lettuce addict, like I loved it, and fresh veg, and it was all repulsive. And maybe it's because your body's not used to other things. Like I don't think it's natural to be craving like crisps and junk. I don't think that is natural, and I definitely didn't crave that. It was more like I need to eat because I feel so crap, but everything is disgusting. So Sometimes it would be like salt and vinegar crisps, like kettle chips are the only thing. It's so weird, but I remember I found it very difficult to eat, and it was eventually I could sort of have like lentil soups, but I would find one thing I could eat, and then I would eat that for like 3 days. So one point it was sweet potatoes with Branston pickle and cashew nuts.
You told
That
me
was
to
it
try
for
that at one
3 days.
point, and I was like, that doesn't sound appealing to a non-pregnant person.
Right, it's amazing. It's seriously amazing. I still stand by that. But then at one point it was just halloumi and peas. But meat at any point I haven't eaten meat in a long time. Like, and I'm conscious of that. And I think the guilt, like I felt guilty about that. I was like, I couldn't even stomach protein powder. So I am just now trying to like incorporate a bit of fish. So I had to have like gluten-free fish fillets to try and like, because just thinking of like plain grilled fish still makes me feel a bit sick. So a lot of it is the preparation of food. So if you've got like a partner, if you're pregnant and there was a partner that could cook for you, if you don't smell it cooking, it's fine. But when you smell things, sometimes that's enough and you can't manage it. So
And do you have any
I
other
don't know.
tips? Or is it like very bio individual to the person, would you say?
I think just listen to your body, because like logically you're feeling guilty, you want to have the protein, you want to have your supplements. Like I couldn't stomach my B vitamin or my Megaspore,
Yeah,
and like
probiotic.
I was like vomiting those back up, and I'm looking at the Megaspore thinking they're still intact and they're like £1 a serving, so I'm not gonna have to.
Yeah, like, that's going back in.
I literally had debated it at some points, like what it was in the toilet, and thought maybe not. But points where like, you know, it's like, okay, this is silly to try and even eat this vitamin, like it's just stupid. So I kind of just had to go with the weird stuff that my body wanted, which was never junk. It was always like, I don't remember really anything I ever wanted, but it has been yeast extract on like those oat muffins that I make. Like that's been like Marmite, which I can't have because of the gluten, but Meridian do like a yeast extract. So that, I don't know what that is, but that's it basically. But I think just go with your body. And honestly, the only time I didn't feel sick was when I was asleep. And if I was overtired, like I didn't sleep well, I would feel sick. So like, just make sure you clear your calendar for like the first trimester, because I was sleeping like 13, 14 hours, like, and everything was really difficult. And maybe that isn't normal. Maybe like I'm really unhealthy or something, but everyone I spoke to was like, your body is just absolutely banjaxed with hormones, so don't even worry. So I'm just like, fine.
Yeah, the average person,
I'd
like
say,
they say it's normal to like eat for two and eat all of this junk food and have all of these major cravings. But I think it's hard when we know what we know about like the protein and all of that. It must be hard to like just accept that you can't do anything, and rather than just trying to force something and making yourself work, you just need to let go and release control.
yeah, and just when you can eat better again, like just do it. Like I'm not really big in, I don't enjoy meat massively, but I will try and have it now like a few times a week, just because like your iron demands are ridiculous. And I'm like, that's like 4 steaks a day worth of iron. And I'm like, I think I may have to supplement, although I don't know. But I'm like, that's a lot of iron, so we'll see.
And
But
that's why the preconception work is like the most important, and I'm trying to promote that to everyone. You have to try and fill up your nutrient stores first, get yourself at least to a good level of health, because when you're pregnant you might not be able to eat good food. Your baby will like leach all the nutrition it needs, even at your expense. So yeah, start as early as possible, and then you don't have to feel so guilty or bad about not being able to eat all of that stuff or take supplements.
Yeah, that was the comfort. And like even Lily Nichols says in her book, she's like, don't worry, you can pick it all up in whenever you can eat again, just pick it up then. And I do believe that, like, I think it's easy to see how people could think about eating for 2, because when you get into second trimester, your appetite really increases, like in a dramatic way. And the moments where I'm suddenly craving like pizza and nachos is what I crave, which is just so random. I'll just, I say to myself, well, I can have that if I want. Do I really want that? And we might plan to have it one day of the week, or I've got like these low carb pizza bases, gluten-free things that, or the cauliflower pizza base, just to like satisfy that craving. But I'm not saying it's wrong to gain weight in pregnancy at all, because you are going to gain weight. Like, that was really hard for me, knowing that even if I wasn't eating, I was being sick all the time. Your body still gains weight because it is so clever. So fine. But I think it's just about, a lot of people go on like a gay abandon a bit, and it's really easy to, because your body like really wants food when you get to second trimester.
It's like catching up on you not having food for 3 months. It's like, well, I can now tolerate it, so let me just make sure I cover all my bases and just eat everything while I have the chance.
Yeah, and I've been just trying to up like my fats and my veg, and like seasoning sprouts with like Worcestershire sauce and chipotle, and just trying my best. But I also am saying to myself, this is a time for me to allow myself, if I want to have a Magnum ice cream, I can have it. And often I just have a few bites and put it back, like, because even eating, Alex is funny, we'll buy hotel chocolate and I'll treat myself to that, and I'll have like one truffle. It's really nice. I have like a raspberry one, but he'll like clean off a packet, and he's like, so if you perhaps have no willpower, it's probably not a good idea to do it, and maybe to see what other hacks you have. But your taste buds change, and I think, some people, everyone's going to gain weight like in pregnancy. I just think you should be kinder to yourself, and if you do want those treats, not to like feel bad, because at the end of the day, like, emotionally, food does make you feel better, and it's a strange time. So
yeah, it's like the biggest motivator to know that it's not just for you, it's for your child as well. So like with the eating disorder past, and like being in this place where you don't really have control over the weight gain, or body changes, like have you noticed any changes? And it's pretty early days, so maybe not, but any changes so far physically?
Yeah, so like I started my well, I'm not going to say what my pre-baby weight was, because that might be triggering for some people, and I honestly don't weigh myself. But I was really feeling good in my body. Like, I felt very healthy. I felt nice and lean, but I wasn't like a stick. And this isn't a judgment about other people's body. It was just, I was in my happy place, and I could eat, and I felt good. And then when pregnancy hit, just probably because of the progesterone, you're always a bit bloated at the beginning. But around 8 weeks, what happened was, like, I was hardly eating. My midsection started to really thicken up. And the midwife said, yeah, well, thicken up, because it's like fluids and all of these other things. And if you ever never Google it, because there are some people who are pregnant on Google who literally look like fucking supermodels at 12 weeks. And they're like in their Gymshark, and you're thinking, fucking hell, like, my midsection looks like a barrel, and like everywhere else is the same. It does mess with your head if you've got a disorder background, I think. And it's all very well saying, these people say, oh, it's for the baby, and and yes, on one hand, but at the end of the day, let's be real, if you've had a severe eating disorder, those pathologies are going to be waiting in the wings of your mind to be like, bang, I have an opportunity to show up now. And if you're not ready to just say, these thoughts are probably going to come back, my anorexic thoughts will come back. They definitely have for me. The guilt around exercise has come back. The guilt around food has come back, particularly as I'm definitely eating a lot of carbohydrate now. A lot of kind of those thoughts and restrictive thoughts, and even a few days where I've noticed I've kind of tracked my calories again, and been worried about going over like 1,000 calories, which is very old. That's like years old. And yet I've kind of had to watch myself go in it to realize, oh, that's what I'm doing. So I would say the weight gain, because to an anorexic background, even though I've been recovered many years and I help people overcome this, like, and I understand how my brain works, it's going to come back, and that's fine. It's just a paradox of progress. It just means the opportunity to deepen my commitment to myself. Because it is, people say do it for the baby. Sometimes, like for me, it still doesn't go deep enough. It's like it needs to be for both of you, you know. So yeah, I'm aware that I didn't think it would come back in this way, but it definitely has. And there has been moments where Alex has been like, what would Vivian say right now? And he'd be like, you know, I'm going to tell Vivian. That's what he'd say. I'm going to tell Vivian. And I'm like, it's all very well you saying that, but like it's a head fuck when you're not even eating that much and you're just thickening up. So it definitely makes you have reverence for the fact you are not really in control of your body. And actually it's better just to go with it and be like, okay, I'm about to gain weight. And in, you know, appointments, they will weigh you, they will do the BMI thing, and they're not really sensitive to if you've had an eating disorder or not. Definitely, in my opinion, they're not sensitive to that.
It's like shouting it across the clinic room for everyone to hear.
Yeah, and actually there's not much on the internet, because I thought, well, you know, there must be some guidance for people that have struggled, and there's not really on the internet. Say that you're in pregnancy and you are having those thoughts, because I was definitely having those thoughts. And I'm someone who, when I'm there, I like to read about it so I can understand it more, even though I know I can get myself out of it very quickly. I think it's like, well, if I was my client now, what would I be experiencing? And like, you know, what, I don't understand this actually, to be pregnant and gaining weight and then to be having anorexic thought patterns. So or you know, whatever eating disordered patterns. And I kind of looked, and there's not really much guidance out there. There's nothing on Beat, which you think there would be. That's like a massive charity. And your midwife my midwife came up with the best advice ever, which was, don't look at the mirror, just make sure you eat a lot and drink water. I was like, right, really really helpful guidance there. So there's not a lot out there for people, and I think it's important to know that when you're pregnant, potentially that can be a huge trigger for you, especially when the hormones are racing around. So I think go into it with a healthy dose of humility and reverence for the fact that those old thought patterns can reappear at any moment, because they are always waiting in the wings of our subconscious mind. You know, they are like anything in nature, they seek to survive. They're like a virus, they will mutate, and it's how do you meet them and how do you deal with that? I want to say the words relapse, but you know, it's not like a relapse. I've just really noticed that's been coming up, and it was definitely hard for me, definitely. But I mean, most days it's, you know, not a big deal, and I just embrace the bump. But other days, you know, and so I think most people, back to your question, will probably grow sort of about 8 weeks. You really start to notice you thicken up, but you don't really have a bump. You just kind of look like you've overdone the cake, or you've kind of got some severe gut problems.
Okay. And it's like the week before your period for most women who can relate. Like you're probably a little bit more bloated, you're like emotional, so you're like picking at your body. So it's probably like that times 1,000 if you are pregnant and you've got a history of eating disorders.
Yeah, but it's more than that week before your period, because in the week before your period, you kind of, it's below the navel a bit. It's, you know, whereas it's below the navel. But the biggest thing I've noticed is that the space above the navel thickens. It's the only way I can describe. I've gained like inches, and my waist itches. So it is different because you actually are thicker and your boobs grow loads. So your torso becomes thick. It's the only way I can describe it. And, you know, then there's the change in your identity. You're no longer like a, you know, as society sees it, like a sexy, skinny young woman. You're like a bloated, crying, sticky mess. And in my case, with acne on my ass cheeks, who can't poo, who can't go to the toilet, like, it's not glamour. Like, and you know, I was and you're already hormonal, so I was watching like this film with Alex the other night, which is called Eyes Wide Shut. You may not have seen it, you may have. It's got loads of like stick, thin, tall, naked, just walking around naked, and they are like definitely underweight, but like just you know, what we would say as a supermodel. And that mess, I just started crying. And he's like, why are you crying? I'm like, because I feel so horrible about the fact that I am a short Oompa Loompa. It really messes with my head. So it's more than, I think it's more than PMS, definitely. He's like 1,000 times, like you say.
And tell us about your experience being pregnant during COVID, like with hospitals and positive or negative. Like, what have you, like with your scans and checkups? How's it been?
It's been quite negative, if I'm honest. I know the NHS are like struggling, but like I don't wear a mask for my own exemption reasons, which are like based in like, you know, my kind of, not my anxiety or anything. It's more to do with the fact that things on my face aren't really nice for me, and it's a choice, like, and they make me anxious. I actually can't breathe when I'm wearing one, and when you're pregnant, like, you can't bloody breathe anyway. Like, you're already breathing a lot more. So I don't wear one, and I've been received quite terribly, and literally a mental health support worker like shouted at me the other day while she was taking my bloods, and there was another mental health support worker in there who just let her do it, and it was like, she was asked, it was ridiculous. So I've never really had been treated so badly by anyone, and maybe that was personal to me, but it really upset me because obviously I'm a pregnant crying mess. So, and I'm not very I don't sort of tell people to F off, or it's not my way. I'll normally cry if someone shouts at me. And yeah, like consultants, when I've tried to explain about the Hashimoto's indication being the word that I will use, and actually taken my bloods from, you know, Medichecks, they just won't look at it. And finally the other day, the consultant listened to me after like 3 wouldn't, and did order the bloods from the endocrinologist, which are looking at not everything, but at least they're looking at antibodies. So that's the only positive thing. The rest, like scans, Alex can't come. The hospitals are like an hour behind on every appointment. It's very clinical. It's not nice, to be honest. And you can't go to antenatal or aqua classes. You can't see a midwife in person where I am. So it's kind of a bit strange. But the positive is the private scans are still going ahead, and you can take your partner. So they're raking it in. Yeah. And they're getting like a lot of my money at the moment, because they have like teddies where you can put your baby's heart beating and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I'll buy it all.
Give me all of it.
And they were like, do you want the... Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I was going to say, when are you due, and do you think you're having a boy or a girl, just intuitively? Is it in your chart?
Well, I'm due the 11th of May, which is a good time. So hopefully it's a Taurus baby, because I cannot deal with a Gemini. And I know what Aries are like, so I don't want an Aries. But so that I'll probably get one. But, you know. So
you know too much.
I know, it's hilarious. I've already looked at its chart for potential dates. But yeah. Yeah, Alex, on his... every medium or astrologer that kind of Alex has said that he would have a boy first. I don't care. My pendulum, I'm swinging, it says it will be a boy. But then I've got, you know, clients in my coaching community really getting into the intuition. They're like, it's definitely a girl. And then I've got other people that are, you know, healers and mediums, and it's definitely a boy. And I'm just like...
What do you think?
But, well, now that so have you heard of the nub theory?
No.
Oh, this is a rabbit hole for you to go down. It's where on the 12-week scans, they like look at the nub, and it's really accurate. They're called like the nub techs on Instagram. And it's how you can see a 12-week scan whether it's a boy or a girl. Now, I was watching the whole 12-week scan as it was happening. It took 45 minutes because the baby was being really naughty and just would not do anything. And my uterus is antiverted, and it has a septum, so it's like mega mangled. So it's really hard to do the scan. But the whole time I was looking, I could see that the nub was like a girl's nub. But then on the photo she took, it's 100% a boy's nub. So I'm no wiser. And I feel like the universe would probably give me a boy, because I want a girl so much, because I like all the unicorn things and clothes. So
why would the universe do the opposite?
Because I've got a lot of karma around men, so it'll probably be probably clear. So I feel like a boy, but
I'm so
Who knows?
excited.
What do you think?
I thought a girl.
See, is that
Mm,
everyone's just like,
I know.
most people have said a boy.
But I've not seen you in person, have I? It might change if I can
We've got good
feel.
names.
Okay.
So if it's a boy, it will be Leo because it was conceived in Leo season. And if it's a girl, imagine if we were going to call it
Taurus.
Vivian. Vivian. No.
Do it.
Sadly, no. It could be a middle name. It's either going to be Sadie, which is after my mum, who passed away, which is quite a cool name.
Yes.
But I really like Florence,
Yes,
and
love it.
I really like Venus, obviously.
Yeah,
But
of course.
Alex isn't into those, so yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited for you. Thank you so much for sharing your honest pregnancy experience, because, yeah.
We left some
You're
of
all,
the juicy bits out.
Oh, like what? Tell me.
Like the horrendous constipation,
Okay.
where I literally think I'm going to push the baby out. I'm really like that, in that much trouble. I think it's because I'm prone to constipation anyway.
Yeah, like your tendency is just worsen. Some people it's acne, their skin gets terrible. Some people it's IBS, or they're on the toilet or constipated all day, every day. So yeah, I've seen that all the time.
Yeah, so I'm like on massive amounts of magnesium citrate, and that's the only thing that will keep me going. And the acne on my ass cheeks, which has developed, like massive boils of acne. So it's stuff that people don't tell you about.
Yeah.
Like, why don't they tell you about these things? Because like I'm obviously not that glamorous. That's the only thing I can put it down to.
You're willing
like,
to share. That's all it is. And people will
I
respect
just
you
want
for
people
it.
to know.
Yeah.
If they feel like they're going to push their baby out because they're trying that hard to go to the bathroom, the fibre gel that they'll give you is fine, but tastes like crap and has loads of aspartame. So that's not going to work for 9 months. If you buy psyllium husk, not from fibre gel, it just did nothing. It just irritated my gut. I tried what Lily Nichols said about the flaxseed, did nothing. Tried lactulose, gave me horrendous bloating and trumps and farts, and I was like, oh my god, because I'm not really a trumper. And then the only other alternative was magnesium citrate, like shit tons of it. So that's basically what I did. And apparently now Vivian's pointing me onto an antibiotic wash for my butt cheeks because I've been washing it with apple cider vinegar, which has been burning, drying it out, but I feel like it's improved.
Yes, you need a salicylic acid cleanser.
Yes, I'm actually going to
send you the link.
Like that. It's CeraVe. I've seen it. It's like £6, isn't it? Yeah, I've seen it.
Like a white and blue bottle.
Yeah, it's white and it like has a. I have seen it.
Yeah.
And the Tesco I go to is really good. It has like a Holland and Barrett in there.
That should do the job. And are you willing to come back on and share your hopefully amazing, beautiful birth delivery story? Like, what's your plan? I know you can't like always decide and have it go to plan, but what's your goal, your dream?
I have this feeling I'll end up with a C-section. It's not what I want, but I just have this feeling. But my plan, I would really like a midwifery-led unit. I didn't want to do it at home. I thought that was a bit bold for my first time. But I really want a water birth because it shows that like stages 2 and 3 of labour are a lot quicker, which is like the pushing kind of stage. And there's less tearing in water, which is like one of the things that's really important to me. And I just feel like water is calming for me. But at the moment I'm under a consultant because of the Hashimoto's stuff, which I don't know. They should, as long as I'm not high risk, because I'm not high risk really, apart from that thyroid stuff. So if my blood tests come back fine, then I'll be able to do that. But you can still have a hospital birth, even a water birth, even if you're in hospital, even if you've got strep B, you can still have the water birth. So yeah, I've got like a birthing plan, but I think the big thing is to know that my friend Sinead, who is also pregnant, you know Sinead because she did your PCOS success and also Duff, like the baby whisperer. But she said at the point where you're like 38, 39 weeks, which is where she's just like, she doesn't care how it comes out. She's just at that point. So I want it as natural as possible. And yet the reality is probably when I get there, I'm just like, I don't even care. So I don't want drugs. I don't really want drugs, but gas and air, fine. But I think that will make me sick and dizzy because my blood pressure's already like 80/40. So if I have that, I'll probably go to sleep. So probably not going to be the right thing for me. So I'm going to try and do like hypnosis and stuff.
Yeah. I think this whole journey is just going to like be so many learning lessons, like you probably already know, and like limiting beliefs that you thought had managed and they've come back to the surface, like they're never, like it's always something to work on, but the ultimate reward is going to be so amazing, so worth it.
Yeah, all the sleepless nights and all the bleeding, aching nipples. Just can't joke.
No, it's going to be an amazing time. Put it out to the universe.
You'll get to see the baby. Literally, I'm going to have to bring the baby up.
I know. Hopefully we're not in an extended lockdown.
Well, I won't talk about the astrology of that for now because it might be depressing for people.
Let's end on a high.
Yeah, let's end on a high.
So tell everyone where they can follow along. I'm sure you're going to be sharing bits and pieces on social media. So remind everyone again, if they're not following you, they definitely need to on social media and your website.
Yeah, so if people want to just keep up to date with all the free astrology stuff on my podcast, have a podcast, Modern Goddess. I also do my coaching. But the main thing that I'm loving at the moment is my No BS astrology school, which you probably know. It's like a 6-week astrology school for total beginners for astrology. And honestly, like, it's really good fun. So there is that going on. But if you just want to follow me and see content, which will probably, once we officially announce it, which will be when this podcast airs, because I haven't been able to, there'll probably be a lot of funny stories, and definitely we'll be sharing a lot of the stuff that no one talks about in pregnancy and like practical ways to deal with it, because the stuff that the midwives tell you and the way they push vaccines on you, it's like learning how to be firm and but not rude, and just, there's a lot that goes on that, you know, when you're like naturally minded, it becomes like a whole different ball game, especially when they're pushing their like prenatal vitamins. So yeah, if you want to follow along, I'm on Instagram at I am Cassie Aurora, or my website is cassieaurora.com. It's very easy.
Amazing. Yeah. And I'll link all of those in the show notes for everyone. And yeah, if you want the real truth, vulnerable stories, sharing sometimes TMI, sometimes TMI, but we all appreciate you for it, then definitely follow Cassie.